And a good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Three Rivers Broadcasting's presentation of The Corner Kick. I'm your host, Alex Fidrashevsky, with you here every Monday at 8 o'clock to whip you around the world of soccer, specifically as it relates to the United States. But again, we'll be with you for the next 50 minutes or so just to whip you around, start the new year off the right way. And now let's kick it off right here in our backyard, just a few miles away down on the Mon. The Pittsburgh Riverhounds, with a big announcement today, came out at noon, high noon, nice dramatic announcement from the Pittsburgh Riverhounds that workhorse midfielder Danny Griffin will be returning in 2022. He played every match the last two seasons. He led the team in minutes played last year, played over 2,800 minutes, which was over 200 minutes more than anyone else. He started all 32 contests and went bell to bell in 31. Very impressive to do that as a 22-year-old. He's the only player also to appear in all 49 of the Riverhounds games the last two seasons, started 46 of those, so clearly a player who, and I've watched him play for the last 2 years, in my opinion, is a little bit above the pay grade, if you will, as far as the USL is concerned. He's a young player who is playing and has played the first two seasons of his professional career with the Riverhounds at a very high level. And, Bob Lilly said in his press release, quote, "Danny's a versatile midfielder, gets better every time he steps on the field. His mentality and growth as a player has been integral in our success these last two seasons, continues to emerge as a leader for our group. Excited to welcome him back for the 2022 season." He was drafted by the Columbus Crew coming out of Providence. They didn't sign him. Maybe they're regretting that a little bit right now. Signed with the Riverhounds during the preseason in 2020 and has been with them for the last 2 years. Very, very energetic young player. He's a box-to-box midfielder. He slid in really well next to Canardo Forbes, has allowed Forbes also to kind of spell himself a little bit as he's gotten older, because Griffin's been able to pick up a lot of the slack, playing very well in a holding midfield role, over 80 tackles. So he's played very, very, very well, and he is just another piece of the puzzle that is returning for Bob Lilly in 2022. It's also worth noting that Bob Lilly has signed a contract extension with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. So the gaffer is going to be here for another 3 seasons. And in my opinion, I've said this before, Bob Lilly is the best lower league manager in North America. I think his record speaks for itself at all of his stops. He's been highly successful. You could almost make the argument that, how come no one in MLS has given Bob Lilly the time of day? But their loss is Pittsburgh's gain, as Bob Lilly's sticking around for another few years. In Pittsburgh, that's something that I think major Pittsburgh sports media didn't cover well enough. There should have been a lot more love for Bob Lilly and the announcement with the Riverhounds that he is staying for another few seasons with the Riverhounds. He extended his contract, I believe it was through 2024, 2025. So it's like 3 more seasons that he's going to be here, at least. So that's very important. His ability to kind of mine talent from nothing and find, also rans and retreads and never wases and turn them into, top-notch players, or get the most out of them, or find their fit in his system, has been, fantastic. And right now, the Riverhounds, as of today, as of noon, after the announcement of Griffin, have 10 players under contract for the 2022 season who are returners from last year. Jelani Peters and Mikhail Williams, most notably in the back line, along with Shane Wheat, Danny Rivera, who played very well back, and Ezra Armstrong, who I think should see some more time this year on the back line as well. So they've got a good core now in the back line. They've got kind of the spine of the team built for this year. There's no goalkeeper signed yet. I know that there had been some reports that they were still trying to talk to Vitiello to try to get Danny Vitiello back on. They'll figure out the goalkeeper situation. I know they were still I think the Riverhounds had even said we're negotiating with XYZ and a few other players, but kind of that spine of the team is set for 2022 right now. And at the USL level, and really at any level, but at the USL level, if you can return year over year, because a lot of USL teams, there's heavy turnover. If you can bring back your core, kind of the spine of the team, your center backs, your holding mids, which Canardo Forbes, Danny Griffin, Todd Ward, like the holding midfielders are there. The center backs are there. And then for me, bringing back Alex Dixon, lots of experience, and then Russell Cicerone, who had an absolutely magical career year in 2021. I figured someone would have made a big move for Cicerone somewhere, whether it was another USL team that said, whatever the Hounds are paying you, we'll double it. Or some MLS team said, you know what, we need somebody. Let's roll the dice, see if we can work with him. He might be a good spark off the bench type guy. But no, Cicerone stays in Pittsburgh, and I think that was the most important of the signings as far as the offense was concerned. As far as they were attacking, Cicerone and Dixon coming back were you couldn't ask for more to get the both of them. I think we knew Canardo Forbes was coming back. Even today, Danny Griffin, I think there was a pretty good shot that Danny Griffin at the end of the year, we knew that Danny Griffin was probably coming back to the Riverhounds, or at least the Hounds would have had a good shot with an offer they extended to Griffin because he's had so much success with them so young. I think, same with, it's not necessarily surprising. Williams and Peters, both, international players for Trinidad, who bring lots of experience, and the core is almost set now. If they, can they get Vidiello back in goal? That would be fantastic. But find a goalkeeper, and you're kind of good up the gut. If you're the Riverhounds, you're good. The spine of the team is there. Now you got to start building out wide. Need a little depth out, in the midfield and the wing spots, and need some more, obviously, attacking depth. And they don't have a goalkeeper, like I said. We need 3 goalkeepers. Got to get 3 goalkeepers, but you can trust that Bob Lilly's working his magic behind the scenes. But as of January 3rd, to have 10 players back who were key contributors from the year before it's almost a little bit of foreign territory here for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds. This doesn't happen normally where, it's January and the Riverhounds know who's, probably 6 or 7 of the starters are going to be. I mean, especially going forward, there's always been a turnover up front for the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, and to know that Dixon and Cicerone are there, I mean, that's 2 of your big attacking spots. You're like, okay, we're good. What about, your 6 and your 8? Well, Danny Griffin, Canardo Forbes, Todd Wharton's there in the mix off the bench, most likely. Okay, we're good in the center of the midfield, and same thing, center back positions. Well, we got 3 of the guys we wanted back. Williams and Peters. Rovira can play out wide. Armstrong can play, out wide. Okay, well, now you got some pieces to work with, and we're going to watch this as the offseason kind of progresses. But if you're a Pittsburgh Riverhounds supporter right now, you have to be very, very happy looking at the 10 players that the Riverhounds have under contract. Yesterday, they also wished Albert Dikwa a happy birthday. Now, Dikwa's not under contract for next year yet, but are they tweeting something out that we should be watching for? Could that be a kind of a foreshadowing that Dikwa might be back in 22? Did take a pretty bad knock last year, but could that be a little something from the Pittsburgh Riverhounds to all of us? Not really sure. Maybe that means he's back in the fold. So, just kind of very quickly to go over it. It was that was another good move today by the Pittsburgh Riverhounds to hold on to a young, talented midfielder who I think the fans have certainly come to respect over the course of the last 2 years. And he came in needing to fill shoes of Robbie Mertz, who went to join the Atlanta United organization, ended up with their USL team. But Griffin came in and stepped in, and he did that job that the Riverhounds needed him to do, to step into that role that Mertz was kind of playing and step up and play, next to Canardo Forbes at a high level from a young age. That was a tall ask from Bob Lilly. To ask a first-year professional coming out of college to step in right away and make a difference. And not only did it once, he did it twice. This is 2 years in a row. So I think Griffin's proven himself now. And having him on board, even if it's only for one more year, the pieces are now starting to come together where the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, I think they're going to be pretty darn good in 2022. And, that Bob Lilly will work his magic as MLS training camps wind down and player movement happens or doesn't happen around the world. And, it's also a little hampered, too. You're working in the winter window in the USL and MLS in your preseasons. You're working in the winter window. And if you go on a website like Transfermarkt, which is one of kind of my hidden addictions of soccer, if you go to transfermarkt.com, you can get they have more. I mean, the market values. Maybe they're a little skewed and things like that they have up on there. I personally think they grossly overvalue a league like Major League Soccer and its players. But just in general, it's a cool site to go look at and see where these guys. I don't even really know who they. I know Manuel Veth is one of the people involved there, and I follow him on Twitter. It's a very interesting website where they have valuations of players in almost every single professional league on the planet. But if you go specifically to this conversation and you look at the transfers and rumors and you click on available where it's free agents. Now, obviously, I don't think Orbelin Pineda is going to come to the USL. I don't think, Ricardo Goulart is going to come to the USL. But if you kind of start looking at, look at it by country right now and you see who's available specifically in areas where the kind of USL will look in the Caribbean and maybe Central America. There's not a lot out there. When you're working the winter window like this, you have to get very creative. And that means you're working with college guys coming out of college who aren't going to make it in MLS, which is the vast majority at this point. The college draft has, for the most part, seen its day. But you're going to work with that. You're going to wait out guys who don't get offers from MLS teams. And then you have this free agent market. Again, as a USL team, you can forget about, your odds of being a USL team and signing a player valued above probably $400,000 or $500,000 is pretty slim. It just is what it is. That type of player plays at a more not a knock on the USL. They play at a more elite level. They play in a better league. They're in that type of players looking at first divisions in whether it's Europe or even some of North America. But you're trying to find these diamonds in the rough, finding guys who are on maybe semi-pro contracts in the Caribbean where the club's like, whatever, we'll let him go. It's really not that big of a deal to whatever. It's a difficult situation to work in, specifically in the USL. MLS is a little easier because you could go after a guy like Pineda. If you're MLS, you're LAFC or somebody, you could try to sign Orbelin Pineda. But if you're a USL team, it's much more difficult to do this, specifically in the winter window where there's fewer players available. So the fact that Bob Lilly can do this every year and cobble together a team in January and February that competes for championships in October and November is a master. There's nothing else you could say about it. So the Riverhounds, I think, are set up to start off the season very well with the 10 players they currently have under contract. And if you're a Riverhounds fan, you should be pretty satisfied. And as this continues to develop, we'll monitor more of it. But when you're 10 out of 26 to 28 in on January 3rd as a USL team that had a good season the previous year, you're setting yourself up for success. So we're going to step aside, take a quick pause for the cause, and then we've got quite a bit to dive into as far as the transfer market is concerned for American players. And we'll touch on one or two Canadians who could potentially be on the move as well, because, again, Corner Kick, we focus more on like the North American related things, and Canada, MLS, it's all kind of tied together. So we'll touch on that a little bit too. But we're going to take a pause for the cause. Again, the punchline, Riverhounds off to a real good start for 2022.
Protect yours and provide for others with the Polish Falcons of America. If you could get great life insurance and make an impact in your community, why wouldn't you? You can do both by choosing the Polish Falcons of America. The PFA provides life insurance and financial services while also giving back to the people we serve by reinvesting our profits into communities. If you're thinking about life insurance, it's time to think differently. Learn more by calling 1-800-535-2071. That's 1-800-535-2071 or visiting PolishFalcons.org. Carnegie Ironworks is Pittsburgh's go-to for artistic, unique, and decorative steel and iron designs. We provide custom fencing, interior and exterior railings, outdoor fire pits, window coverings, and much more. If you can think of it, we can fabricate it. Find us on the web at www.carnegieiron.com. That's Carnegie Ironworks, for when you need it for 500 years. Are you an athlete looking to take your game and performance to the next level? Gym Rat Performance Training is where Pittsburgh's elite competitors go to train. We specialize in personal training, strength, speed, and agility training, sports-specific training, and we offer the best basketball player development in the City of Champions. If you are ready to transform your body, expand your mind, and reach your potential, it's time to join the Rat Pack at gymratpt.com. That's GYMRATPT.com. Gym Rat Performance Training, punishing Pittsburgh since 2016 because rats don't rest. Are you looking for a job that can turn into a career? If so, why don't you hit the road with Waste Management? Waste Management is hiring experienced and entry-level CDL truck drivers and technicians. If you're at least 18 years of age, come join our growing team and get up to a $7,000 sign-on bonus based on experience. WM offers competitive pay and industry-leading benefits, including tuition reimbursement for yourself and dependents. Start your tomorrow today. Visit WM online at careers.wm.com.
All right, and we're back here on the Corner Kick. Alex Vidrashevsky with you again each and every Monday. We come to you at 8 p.m. on threeriversbroadcasting.com. Of course, you can follow me at Fid Sports, FYD Sports. Follow us on Twitter at 3R Broadcasting as well. Coming up on Wednesday, we've got the Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report at 8 p.m. Coach Krzyzewski and myself, we got a new sponsor that we're going to talk to you about as well. Very excited about bringing them on board. It's a sports-related venture, too, for us here at Three Rivers Broadcasting, which I know everybody's going to like. Everybody's a big fan of our sports coverage, so we're going to keep that rolling. Let's just jump into this right now. Here, we're going to talk about a little of the silly season business that's going on, and I think it's a good place to start right here in MLS. Two big moves that I think we knew were coming for some time. And I think we're starting to reach a point where the international market is becoming a valuable place for the young American player. Within the last 72 hours or so, we've got two done deals. Another one that's probably, from what it sounds like, about 90% there, and another 3 or 4 irons in the fire for young U.S. national team pool players who will be big-time guys for us going forward. Daryl DK and Ricardo Pepi. That's two young strikers. True strikers. Number 9 type guys who have moved for a combined total if you count on the sell-ons and incentives and things and that, these guys can make almost, you're talking MLS has made almost $30 million in just 3 days in January. That's pretty darn good on two guys. So DK, Orlando sent him to Barnsley last spring, and he played very, very, very well. He was banging in goals for them. And I think they may have handcuffed him for 6 months because they said they wanted 20. Thought that was a bit much for him. I said 10 in the summer was going to be a fair deal, and that if they were smart, they'd take half of their ask, which I thought was asinine at the time, but it goes to show that the home office of MLS is still not soccer smart. They're NFL guys and finance bro business, whatever you want to call them. Yeah, we've all got our, whatever you want to call that type of business person that doesn't, they still don't fully yet understand the global nature of soccer, where MLS went to Barnsley and said, we'll loan him and you can have him for $20 million. And a team like that, really any team in Europe, is going to look at MLS and go, haha, you're funny. We'll go sign a striker from Uruguay and pay Peñarol $6 million for a guy who's going to be just as good, maybe better. Bye. And then MLS, over the years, this is what they've done, and they've been left standing there holding the bag going, but wait, come back. No. And at that point, it's too late. So I said over the summer, take 10 and move DK. DK goes to West Brom. They formalized the deal Saturday. I mean, bang, right out the gate on New Year's. $9.5 million in transfer fee, 4.5-year deal for DK. Perfect setup. He scored 9 goals in 22 games for Barnsley last year. He's going to be coached by the same guy. Ismail coached him at Barnsley. He's now going to be his manager at West Brom. So he knows him very well. This was the perfect fit. And West Brom, they're in the hunt in the championship. They're just outside the automatic promotion spots, top 3. They're just outside of that. So Daryl Dike is going to be expected to go in day one by West Brom and help push him over the top. Get him into the top 3, get him in the Premier League. He should be, if he can continue his run of form that he had with Barnsley at the Hawthorns, West Brom's going to have a good shot at automatic promotion to the Premier League. And for an American player, young American player at that, 21, it's a great move. Who's proven himself now in MLS, proven himself in the championship already in that type of mix with Barnsley. That's where he went last year, into that same kind of promotion, top of the table grinder, and played very well. Broke in with the national team. It's the type of move that you make, and it's the right move at the right time for DK with the right gaffer who now, who trusts him, clearly trusted him on loan. Now he bought him. He's going to insert him in the roster. He's going to have a shot at earning minutes in the 11 right out the gate. Gave him a long-term deal. It's a great setup for him to get overseas and start moving. The more interesting one here is Augsburg getting Ricardo Pepi to me. I think we knew that DK was bound for England. And I think, a lot of these guys, specifically the Dallas guys who've moved on, that was Oscar Pareja, who was a big kind of play the kids, bleed the kids believer. Listen, it's one of those things like, you're not going to there's no relegation. You're not going to drop down if you play the kids. What's the worst thing that happens? You miss the playoffs? Oh, well, half the teams make the playoffs. The playoffs really mean crap in MLS. When you're taking 16 out of 30, it really doesn't mean anything. Sorry to burst the bubble of people who still think the MLS playoffs are, yeah. Did you watch the final? I mean, it was a well-played game, but it was, yeah. We'll leave it there. But Pareja was one of those guys who he set that bar really high in Dallas. I think the Red Bulls have done a pretty good job of that. Now, the Red Bull organization seems to be a dumpster fire. Their captain just left, but they've played the young guys, and it's benefited. Pepe, Augsburg get him. There are some folks asking, did David Blitzer, the American billionaire who's recently joined the Augsburg ownership group, kind of help fund that over the top? Maybe. And I think for me, you look at where both of these guys are headed, they're great landing spots, and there are some folks questioning Pepe's move to Augsburg, and saying, this isn't the most ideal situation for him. It's the lower half of the Bundesliga. Wolfsburg, Wolfsburg, I think we think would be better. Wolfsburg have lost 5 on the trot. They're in no better situation or worse situation than Augsburg. Wolfsburg have a lot of problems. Augsburg, it was a flip of the coin where he was going to go, and again, he's such a young kid that at this point it's irrelevant whether he's at Wolfsburg or Augsburg. He's gone to the Bundesliga, and that's where he needs to be at 18 years old. And he's going to have to fight for time against better, older, more experienced players, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think a lot of folks are now on this kick of like, well, we're at a point where we should only send players to Europe if they're going to go to Dortmund, Munich, Leverkusen, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool. If it's not to this top 20 teams, no. Why would we send them over there? No, it's because Augsburg would probably run roughshod over Major League Soccer. I know people don't want to hear that. But Augsburg would probably smash through MLS without a problem. They'd lose a game here or there, but on the whole, they'd probably smack right through it. The difference between MLS and the Bundesliga is night and day. So it's a great move for Ricardo Pepi. That's 2 in 2 days. And I think also worth mentioning here, neither one of these guys came from what you would consider a soccer hotbed. DK grew up in Oklahoma. Pepi is from El Paso, which, again, I know, El Paso is a border city with Mexico, and Ciudad Juarez is on the other side, but I've never thought of Ciudad Juarez as a major, it's not a major soccer spot in the Mexican soccer culture. So again, it's a major city. I'm not going to say it's off the beaten path, but at a time where everybody's really focused on the Galaxy Academy, FC Dallas Academy, and Red Bull, and they're getting these kids at 8, 9, and 10 years old. It's, some of these guys, they're still going to come from other places, and I think there's more untapped potential in smaller cities and rural areas in America in soccer than there is in New York and LA and Atlanta and Dallas. Even here in Pittsburgh, the Riverhounds are in the process of building the premier training facility for soccer in Western Pennsylvania. If you don't think that Tuffy Schallenberger is investing in a 10 to 12 field indoor outdoor training facility with medical staff and his offices and the whole 9 yards down there in the McKees Rocks. You bet your bottom dollar that partnership he's entered into in that facility is to produce professional players down the line. It takes 10 years. Generally speaking, an academy like that takes 10 years from when it opens up to start producing top shelf talent. Having an academy structure like that here in Pittsburgh, with the Riverhounds building such a facility where you can start getting the elite kids in there every day around top level coaches, open it up, give it a decade. The 8-year-olds, they'll be the first crop. And in a metropolitan area that is now turning the corner population-wise, it's important here in Pittsburgh. Which is this is a pretty heavy soccer area too. There's a lot of soccer history here, going way back. I mean, we're talking over 100 years. Some of the more successful mill and mine clubs in the country were here. Heidelberg had one of the top teams in the country. Tiny little Heidelberg had one of the best teams. So there's a tradition for it here. And again, I think there's more potential in places like Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Buffalo. And, there's growth potential. There's big growth potential for this sport in all of those cities. Opening a facility like that, for the Riverhounds also, it could catch the eye of MLS too, where they're going to be like, wait a minute, what's going on here? Do we need to go visit them a couple of times, see what other kind of investors are out there? Can they put a group together in Pittsburgh? Might not be a bad idea. But again, these guys came kind of off the beaten path. Now, I don't want to say they were really like Clint Dempsey really came from off the beaten path. From Nacogdoches, Texas, where his parents were driving 5 hours to train. That was really off the beaten path. These guys, they're not within kind of what you would have considered the normal sphere. But two really, really good moves. And then, again, a couple more on the way. There's some serious smoke to the James Sands Rangers thing. I think that's a good look for him. 21 years old, can play multiple positions, getting a team in a league that, Scotland and the MLS, probably fairly similar leagues as far as the overall swath of talent. MLS is better at the bottom probably than the Scottish Premier League is at its bottom. But the top of the Scottish Premier League is probably better by leaps and, at least Celtic and Rangers. It's a leap and bound kind of thing. But, that middle 4 or 5 teams in Scotland, your Hearts and Hibs and Aberdeens, and they're probably about the same level. So is it fairly a lateral move for Sands to go to Scotland? From a league perspective, probably. But the fact, if it's Rangers, that's the landing spot, like they're reporting. Now you're playing, you're competing at the top 2 to 3. You're competing for Champions League place. You're going to be playing at the worst in the Europa League every year. And at a massive club. So, where the pressure is going to be high. So in that aspect, it would be a very, very good move for James Sands. I think we've known that a move was going to be in the works for James Sands since he broke into MLS in 2017. Now it just seems time is here. And again, Rangers would be a great landing spot for him. A top shelf club in a middling league in Europe. On the whole, again, it's top heavy, it's bottom weak, and its middle 5 or 6 teams are about the level of a lot of MLS teams. So it'd be a good move for him, specifically to get into the European competition. That's really the big point there for him. Atlanta United, another one who could lose a player this January. Apparently, Claudio Ranieri of Watford is looking for reinforcements at the back line. George Bello is one of those guys. 19-year-old from Atlanta, broke in with the national team, played well for the club last year, and Atlanta may have a replacement for him in Andrew Gutman, who was with the Red Bulls on loan, and he's back in Atlanta now. So it could all work itself out that George Bello could make a move to Watford, in January. That was a report coming from the Telegraph. So there's some smoke there as well with Bello. So again, start seeing this lineup of Americans starting to make moves. There's some rumors that have been bouncing around for a while now about Cole Bassett, Colorado Rapids midfielder, who broke through in 2018. Again, is another one who came in at 17 years old and is part of that crop with Sands and, now Bello and DK and Pepe, all these other guys who has a high ceiling and nothing super concrete as far as names of clubs yet in Europe, but it's just everything I read, the Eredivisie, Belgium, England, Germany, there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of interest for Bassett, who, again, does transfer market overvalue Americans for some odd reason? Yeah, I think so a little bit. They got him valued at 6 million euros, probably like a 4 or 5 million, probably like a 3 or 4 or 4 or 5 type guy. Might be a little overvalued, but he's got a high ceiling, and he's another one who's I think destined for Europe, possibly in January. Looks like it. And the more players that you get over there, the better it is. There's another move in the works. I believe it was Anthony Fontana from the Philadelphia Union is close to finalizing a deal with, I think it was Ascoli in Serie B. Ascoli, yeah. So Anthony Fontana, who was sort of seldom seen during his time with the Union, good young player, 22 years old, who really, I would say, kind of broke through this year. But at 22 years old, is going to leave the Philadelphia Union and set course in Europe. And again, I mean, that's just another feather in the cap. If you're the U.S. national team, it's another guy who's over there at a tougher level, and you're going to break through. And when you go from 35 guys over there who are in your player pool to 40 or 45 or 50, it just helps the national team. And I think I'm not going to say we're definitely there, but we're approaching a tipping point where the United States and Canada are passing by the Mexican national team as far as depth is concerned. The U.S. and Mexico both handled the U.S. and Canada both handled Mexico pretty easily in their World Cup qualifiers. I know Herrera got one late and it was 2-1. That game was done and dusted. Canada really did what they needed to do. The U.S. depth of player pool that's now European based. And I know I harp on that a lot, and there's others who are probably lining up. I think, there was some rumors about Miles Robinson going over and, a few others. I think when you hit that point where you got 40 or 50 guys like we do, you're at the elite level now. And it's only going to continue to grow. You have to remember, these guys who are 28 and older are essentially out of the national team pool at this point. It's the youth movement, and they're all abroad, and there's a very, very high future and a very bright future, high ceiling for the U.S. national team. Canada's starting to tap into it too. You think, again, Canada's another nation where soccer is not the top sport, it's hockey, but they're starting to really push out some players as well. Jaquil Marshall-Ruddy was the one Canadian I wanted to talk at. Toronto, 17 years old. Liverpool and Arsenal starting to look around for him. They've already got a host of young attackers who are overseas. And I think Canada is pretty close to shoring up a trip back to the World Cup for the first time in my lifetime. So there's a lot of good for them. They did lose a player who was a dual national, picked Turkey, but it was a very convoluted situation. Kadioglu probably wasn't going to pick Canada anyway. It was like I think he was born in Canada to two foreign parents, and they left. Something along those lines. So his loss is another attacking winger. Canada's already got 6 wingers. They don't need another winger. If it's a center back or some outside back, then that's a different story. It's the one spot Canada still needs to really develop, where I think the U.S. is ahead. Canada's attackers are almost as good as ours, if not as good as ours, with Tajon and Kyle Aaron, Davies, David, Liam Miller. I think we're almost equal at that point. As far as attackers go, I think our defensive midfielders might be a little touch better, and their back line needs to improve. That's the one spot that the Canadians haven't yet figured out how to develop, but they need. It's almost like you need a former player to come back and lead that big push to start saying, hey, we got to start finding center backs here, because if I look at one weak spot for the Canadians, whether it's through the remainder of qualifying or into the World Cup, and obviously we got qualifiers at the end of January that we're going to start talking about, so rosters are going to be coming out. It is the back line. But again, 2-3 great moves for American players here in the early going in January, and we'll get into the World Cup qualifiers in the next program next week. Want to thank everybody for tuning in. We're going to head on out of here. Have a great night. God bless. We'll catch you on Wednesday. Three Rivers Broadcasting Sports Report.